What if I were to tell you that the U.S. government is about to pass a law that says if you don't go to church every Sunday, you'll be imprisoned? Or what if I were to tell you there's a law on the books that says every gay man in America is to be executed? That's what a lot of people are afraid of whenever we discuss the topic of Christian nationalism. That's what people are afraid of whenever we have the discussion around the separation of church and state. Over the last few months, maybe over the last just few years, there's been this buzz term that's gotten really popular, and the term is Christian nationalism. It's kind of become a little bit of a boogeyman of sorts in some circles. And so I think the biggest problem is that whenever people use the term Christian nationalism, is we're not using the same definition. There's a few different types of Christian nationalists, and I think it's valuable to pause and define that term to ensure that we know what we're talking about. So the first version of Christian nationalism might be kind of the most extreme variation of it. This would be someone who professes to be a Christian who would then say, hey, we should have everyone in America be required to attend church on Sundays. If you are a Muslim, you are required to convert, or we're going to deport you, or maybe even execute you, right? There's a variation out there. Someone who might say, hey, every gay man in America should be executed. Those are the types of things that no one is allowed to profess a different religion other than Christianity. This does exist in the world, but frankly, it doesn't exist within Christianity. Actually, the version of religious nationalism that does exist in the world is within the world of Islam. If you go to places like Iran or parts of Afghanistan or other parts of the Muslim or Arab worlds, there are Muslims that believe if you profess a religion other than Islam, you should be executed or deported or imprisoned. In many places around the world, in predominantly Muslim countries, it is against the law to proselytize, to try to share the Christian faith. You could be imprisoned or executed for converting from Islam to Christianity. But that doesn't exist within the Christian world. Not that I know of. I don't know of any country on planet Earth where if you were to convert from Christianity to Islam, you're then going to be killed for walking away from Christianity. There may be people in the world that want that, but it's a very, very small percentage of people. However, there's a lot of American people who are afraid of that. Whenever the topic of the separation of church and state come up, there's a lot of people who are afraid that if we allow too much religion into the public square, if we allow too much religion in our politics, then that means it will lead to a Christian version of Sharia law here in the United States. I'm not sure that that's actually a reasonable conclusion, but it is a real fear that a lot of people have. So that's that version of Christian nationalism, that extreme version that lots of people are afraid of. Then there's this other version of Christian nationalism. I'm going to call it the version that's promoted by many liberal progressive media types in the United States. There are some people in the United States that would say any bit of religion that's coming into the public square should be labeled as Christian nationalism. That if you use your Christian religion even a little bit, then you're a Christian nationalist. That you are like the person who wants to execute gay men. That if you use your Christian beliefs when you vote, then it's just as bad as the Muslim in Iran who is torturing someone who has converted to Christianity, as if those are on the same playing field. Recently, there was a prominent MSNBC media personality that said, the Christian nationalist is anyone who believes that our rights are given to us by God, not by government. This MSNBC media personality was making the argument that the reason why Americans have certain rights, certain privileges that we enjoy, is because the U.S. government gives us those things. And that if you believe that it is God who grants those rights, then you are a terrible Christian nationalist, that you are harmful to our country, that you are going to cause our country to fall apart, and that people will not flourish under that ideology. But that definition of Christian nationalism is very odd, because that definition of Christian nationalism would mean that Thomas Jefferson is a Christian nationalist and that all of the founding fathers are Christian nationalists. The Declaration of Independence clearly says we believe that God gives certain rights and that it is government's job to instill a system to protect those rights. That is literally the founding document of the United States of America. Thomas Jefferson and the founding fathers came along and said, we believe it is God who gives rights. And we believe the current British system that we are under, this British king, this British tyranny, does not protect the actual rights that God promises for people, that God grants for humanity. So the founders came along and said, we believe it is righteous and appropriate to overthrow any government that does not protect the rights that God has first given us. That is the primary idea behind the Declaration of Independence. Literally, you can't even dispute that. If you've not read the Declaration of Independence, I'd encourage you to go back and do that. The foundation of that document, the foundation of our entire American system, is the idea that rights come from God and that government's responsibility is to protect those rights. Government does not have the power to grant rights. Government doesn't have the power to determine what rights you can or cannot have. That's not within the scope of government's authority, at least not according to the founding fathers of the United States of America. The founding fathers believe that it is God who has the rights to grant rights. It is God who grants rights, and it is government who protects rights. That's not Christian nationalism. That's traditional American ideology. So clearly, theological beliefs or religious ideas are playing a role in our country, and they have from the very, very beginning. People recognize that there is a standard, there's a foundation. Every nation is going to have a foundation of some sort. And we in the United States of America, our foundation was the idea that there is a creator, and that creator grants rights. That's the founding sentiment of the entire United States of America. So for anyone to come along and to say that theology or religion or the belief in God should play no role in the American society is contrary to what the founding fathers actually set up. And honestly, contrary to what pretty much every American believed before 1960. So people come along and they say religion should play no role in the foundation of our country. Religion should play no role in politics or in laws or policy. My response to that is always, well, there's always going to be a standard, so what do you think the standard ought to be? What should be the foundation? I believe the foundation should be Christian morality. I believe that the foundation, that the laws of our country should be founded on traditional Christian ethics, traditional Christian morality. Should be utilizing things like the 10 Commandments. Now, you may disagree with that. You may say, no, Kenny, we can't have any religious ideology at the foundation of our country. We should have something else. When I would say, well, what should that thing be? Some people would say, well, we should have old documents. We should have documents like philosophical writings from ancient Greece or ancient Rome. We should have various philosophical writings from the medieval era. And that should be the foundation of our country. Not the Bible, not Christian writings. We should use ancient documents. Well, isn't the Bible an ancient document? Why does one ancient document get lifted up and another one get ignored? Why does the writings of Plato and Aristotle get viewed as sacred in the minds of many secular progressives, but the writings of the Apostle Paul somehow is less than? Like you believe that old documents should be the foundation, or I believe old documents should be the foundation. Well, now we're just arguing about which old documents. There are other people who would say the foundation of our country should be consensus. Whatever the most amount of people want, that's the thing that should be the foundation of all of our laws of our country. Well, the problem with that is simply this. What if the consensus is something that you know is morally wrong? For example, there was a consensus in 1820 that white people could own black people. Everyone in the South believed that, and a lot of people in the North believed that. That was the consensus in 1820. Do you think it's okay for the law of the land to be based on the consensus? What if there was a revolution in American ideology? What if over the next few years, most Americans began to believe that it was appropriate for 35-year-old men to have sexual relations with 5-year-old girls? What if that was the consensus? Should it be okay? Should the American government then pass a law that it's okay for 35-year-old men to have sexual relations with little girls? Is that what you're saying? Because if you say that consensus should be the foundation of the land, then you are opening the door to some very vile, wicked things to come in play. Or what about this? If you say the laws of the land should be consensus, what if 80% of the American public were evangelical Christians and 80% of the people said we should use the 10 Commandments to be the laws of a land? That's the consensus. Would you be in favor of it then? I have a feeling that a lot of secular progressive types would not be. That the consensus is good so long as the consensus reinforces their ideology. That's ultimately what's happening. People go around and say, the consensus should be the foundation of our moral codes and of our laws and our policies, as long as that consensus reinforces what I believe is right or what I want to be popular. The idea of separation of church and state is odd because it opens the door to some very weird, vile ideas that none of us would be okay with. So those are the two variations of Christian nationalism out there, or at least that's how they're defined. There's the extreme person, and then there's the person who just wants any religion in the public square. But that's actually not what most Christian nationalists want. Most people who call themselves Christian nationalists are not in favor of this extreme version. And it's totally unfair to say that anyone who wants any religion in the public square to play a role, therefore they're Christian nationalists and they're bad. That's also an unfair definition. What most Christian nationalists are saying when we are saying we are Christian nationalists, a term that I'm fine to use to describe myself, what we're simply saying is that Christian morality should be the foundation of our moral system, of our code, of our ethics, of our laws. That if the Bible says something is immoral, then we should restrict or eliminate that thing within our society. And if the Bible says something is good, then we should promote that thing within our society. I think the Bible, the Ten Commandments in particular, is a great moral code. It has passed the test of time. I think it's valuable and useful. And I think it would be perfectly appropriate in our country to use the Ten Commandments or traditional Christian morality as the basis for how we pass laws. We're not saying that you have to convert to Christianity. I can't do that. I can't force you to believe something. I'm not capable of doing that. Very few people who would say they're Christian nationalists or they want to use Christian morality as the basis of policy are saying we're going to force you to be a Christian. That's not what we're saying. We're not saying we're going to force you to go to church on Sundays. We're not saying that you have to believe what we believe. You can be a Muslim. You can be an atheist. You can be whatever you want to be. We cannot restrict or inform belief, but we can restrict and inform behaviors. If you believe it's right to have sexual relations with a child, you're allowed to believe that. I believe it's immoral, and I want to restrict that behavior. I want to eliminate your freedom to do that. You may believe it's appropriate for a white person to own a black person. I believe it's wrong. I believe that's immoral. And so therefore, while I can't change your belief, I can change your behavior. The best moral code the world has ever seen is the moral code that's built on the New Testament. The founding fathers knew that. Most of the founding fathers were not Christians, but all of them ascribed to the moral code taught in the Bible. And that led to a tremendous amount of flourishing in American history. And I think we would be wise to continue to embrace the New Testament, the Bible, traditional Christian morality as the basis for our laws in this country. Most of us who call ourselves Christian nationalists, we're not trying to force you to believe something. We're simply wanting to curb behavior and bring everyone's behavior in line with what we believe is true and good. You may disagree with that. You're allowed to have a different opinion on what the foundation ought to be. But you cannot deny that in our nation's history, what some people now call Christian nationalism is simply the traditional American ideology. I think we'd be wise to lean into that rather than running from it, as many people would have us do. Hey, if you like this video, smash that like button and subscribe for more.